Hey, what's going on, guys? Shane here.
Vince the Anomaly.
Now, we recently did a video on how to throw the overhand right, but today Vince is going to talk about 5 common mistakes that you want to avoid making because they could be very costly. Let's take a look at the first one.
Common mistake number 1 would have to be our knuckle connection. On this punch, especially because it's more of a looping, big, wide shot, people tend to kind of hit with this part of their palm or this part of their glove. Now, when you're wearing a glove, if you're throwing nice and light, maybe you won't feel it. But try it against a bag. If you hit with this part of these knuckles in the front of your hand here, it's going to really hurt. Another common one is hitting with your thumb. So I've done it before, Shane. Yeah, I'm sure you've done it before.
Too many times.
Everyone's done this one before where they're kind of connecting, since the shot's coming up wide, they're hitting with their thumb. And you can sprain that. It actually happens to me a lot in MMA fights because you don't have that thumb protection. And it's not because of overhand rights, it's just punching in general. Your thumb tends to get caught. So be sure that when we are connecting, we're connecting with those first 2 knuckles. So one thing I like to do when I'm throwing it is almost like I'm throwing a hook, really turn and get that elbow up and over so I can land. If I am throwing the punch more this direction, again, we're connecting with those first 2 knuckles. So I'm throwing it and it's connecting in the right spot. Be sure that that knuckle connection is good. Now, common mistake number 2 is that this turns into more of an arm punch. Again, it's a looping punch, right? So people want to get like this baseball wind up and falcon punch, and then when I make that connection, my arm's behind my body.
Yeah.
So let's say I've done everything right. I've twisted my hips, I've turned everything into it, and I'm gonna get a lot of power on this, like I'm swinging a baseball bat. But my elbow is really far back, so when I turn and I throw like this, it's really more of an arm punch than anything. I want to make sure that I'm connected, so my shoulder is going to be nice and stiff. I like to keep my elbow in line with that shoulder, so when I turn, notice, guys, how everything is connected in my back. So I turn my hips, I turn everything over, and that's going to have a lot more power on this punch. It's going to land that knockout blow for you if you are connected. Don't make it an arm punch. Now, common mistake number 3, Shane mentioned it in the previous video, is properly stepping in, getting that good weight shift. But again, because this is a big arm punch, or it looks like a big arm punch, people are throwing this nice and wide. They want to get that connection, but they forget that the power of our punch comes in our hips. It almost always does. So we're going to use this back leg to kind of shift my weight forward. I'm turning my hips at the same time, and I'm staying connected. I'm engaging my core. So as I throw this shot can land with some heavy, heavy power. Be sure that you're getting your hips turning into that punch. Be sure you're pivoting that back foot and stepping into it. Get that proper weight shift. Yeah. All right, now common mistake number 4, leaving this hand down. We're thinking so much about landing this big right that this hand tends to pump and turn our body over, and I'm throwing here, but exactly, it leaves me open for that shot. Whether Shane's either timing the shot really well or he just so happened to press that trigger right then and throw his hook, his straight punch, I don't want to get hit with that. I want to make sure that when I step in, I'm keeping this guard up so that just in case that punch comes in or that kick comes in, it's going to be blocked by my hand. Now, our last common mistake, in boxing you can kind of get away with this because there aren't any kicks, there aren't any knees, but in MMA, you're not going to be so fortunate. You guys can see that right on my forehead. It's a nice centipede scar because I was dipping my head, and people tend to do this a lot with this punch. They tend to wind up and they dip their head down and throw this overhand, and that's when you eat your knee. I actually ate a knee just like that in practice. The guy just threw a knee at the same exact time, and the only reason it landed like that and cut me open is because I was shifting too far forward and I was leaning too far forward this way. And when your head is facing the ground, it's never a good thing. You know, even if we're taking a shot in MMA, a wrestling shot, I'm not going to go with my head down like this because it's going to be easy for Shane to guillotine me, to stuff my head and sprawl. We're always shooting with our head up. So same thing with our punches here, guys. With this overhand, I'm throwing this, my head is still up. I can dip my body low, but I don't want to be here where I'm dipping my head low. That's going to be a big problem. So be sure that when you're throwing these overhands, those are the 5 common mistakes people tend to make. Make sure you're not doing them.
Alright guys, there you have it. So it's kind of tough to identify these mistakes when you're training by yourself. So what you can do is grab a partner, you both put gloves on, and to hold for an overhand right, I'm just going to slightly have my palm face the ceiling in front of my face here, and Vince is just going to let one rip. Boom. And I'm just going to scan to see, is he making any of those 5 mistakes? No. Everything looks good. You can go for about 20 punches and then you switch roles. If you are training by yourself, upload a video of you doing it and tag Vince the Anomaly on Instagram. He'll critique it for you. But until then, be sure to subscribe to get the fight tips before your opponent does. I'm Shane.
Vince the Anomaly.
Fight Tips for the underdogs.